Aloha mai kako, a kamamaita curtain call, a program of reviews, previews, interviews, and features of and or with the great art and artists on Maui and beyond. I'm Paul James Brown. Tennessee Williams is the greatest American playwright of the 20th century. His characters are iconic, and his exploration of the human condition is endless. When I was in New York, I had a Tennessee Williams gym where actors worked out on Williams scenes to strengthen them in their character work and to deepen their understanding of the art of acting. Call me crazy, but when I found myself on the mainland to see my stepdaughter Juliette Green do Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast in Palo Alto, and then my friend Ingrid Hagelberg, an international jazz singer, was doing a show at the Musical Instrument Museum in Scottsdale, and I found out one of my favorite singers, Marie-Claire Girard, was doing Tennessee Williams in New York, I had to extend my trip, fly cross country, and see this show, and I'm glad I did. Actors Equity approved showcases allow union members to appear in small, limited-run shows without an equity contract, but with specific defined terms and conditions. With 45,000 members, there are many more members than there is work. So these showcases give members a chance to hone their art and get the opportunity to be seen by casting directors and agents, as well as the general public. This is the fifth time Merciful Delusions Productions, with Nicole Gutt as producing artistic director, has presented 4 Tennessee Williams one-acts with esteemed director Lorraine Serbian. One of the most valuable aspects of equity-approved showcases is it provides a venue for the new actors to work with seasoned and experienced performers, which they otherwise would not be able to. This show featured several actors who were making their New York stage debut. 2 of the plays, Hello from Bertha and The Lady of Larkspur, Lotion, I am familiar with, and 2, The Case of the Crushed Petunias and Mooneyʻs Kid Don't Cry, were new to me. The program opened with The Case of the Crushed Petunias, which was one of Williams' first plays. He won a playwriting competition, and it was performed by the Group Theater in 1939, where it was seen by Audrey Wood, who became Mr. Williams' literary agent on the basis of its strength and remained his agent throughout his fabled career. It was like a comedic allegory meets The Twilight Zone. Mr. Williams is not known for comedy, so I was surprised to find myself laughing out loud to lines like, "I can't give a definite answer. I'm from Boston." The characters are Dorothy Simple, Michelle Opedesano, Man, Martin Riofria, Officer J.R. Carter, and Mrs. Dull, Elizabeth Bove, Actors Equity Association. It takes place in prim and proper Massachusetts, and inexplicably, the play is set in the 50s, even though it was written in the 30s, and the character Man is originally young man. I presume this was a producer-director choice, but it surprised me because you cannot change anything in Tennessee Williams' play without written permission from his estate. The fact that they list Dorothy Simple as Ms. Simple in the program is interesting, since the Ms. moniker didn't come into popular use until the 60s. Ms. Simple runs a notion shop and has her petunias and her canary. She is shocked to discover her petunias have been attacked and trampled by someone in a size 11D shoe. Mr. Williams' father was an itinerant shoe salesman, and Mr. Williams worked during the Depression in his hometown shoe factory. The perpetrator shows up at the store. He is only known as Man to rescue her from her mundane, mediocre existence. He is from Life, Inc., and his mission is to help Ms. Simple break out of her empty being and find life. She is successful and abandons her previous mundanity for the unknown adventures awaiting on Highway 77. While Ms. Opedesano went on the journey that Mr. Williams created with humor, passion, and commitment, Mr. Riofria didn't seem to know he was doing a seduction. The second act was The Lady of Larkspur, Lotion. It takes place in a cheap room in a flophouse in New Orleans in the 40s. Here again, the main character, who is Mrs. Hardwick Moore, is only identified as Lady, played by Aurora Quintard. She is a precursor to Blanche Dubois in Williams' Pulitzer Prize winner A Streetcar Named Desire. Like Blanche, Lady has a fantasy supporter. Hers is a Brazilian rubber plantation owner. Mrs. Wire, Elizabeth Bove, Actors Equity Association, the landlady of the establishment, comes to collect the rent. The lady doesn't have it due to, she says, the late receipt of her Brazilian endowment. Then she proceeds to regale Mrs. Wire about the cockroaches and says she will pay when the roaches are exterminated. Enter Josh Freed, the writer, to rescue the lady from the clutches of Mrs. Wire. We learn that the Brazilian is a total fabrication as the writer asks her about the proximity of the plantation to the Mediterranean and the White Cliffs of Dover, and introduces himself as Anton Chekhov. Ms. Bove, who was born to be on stage, her father was Jose Ferrer, and Uta Hagen was her mother, dominates the other two performers. Her Mrs. Wire is clear, purposeful, and powerful. Miss Quintard is a lithe, lovely lass who didn't seem to know that Larkspur Lotion was a cheap alcohol-based treatment for body vermin, which she used to reach a state of euphoria to escape the misery of her surroundings. Mr. Freed seemed initially lost, but found his way quickly and gave us Mr. Williams's impression of himself. After intermission, we went to a cheap flat in a large industrial city in the 40s for Mooney's Kid Don't Cry, with Joey Welsh as Mooney and Natalie Necchifaro, Actors Equity Association, as Jane. This is about a young couple. They have only been together for 10 months, struggling to survive. Mooney is trying to support his family while wishing to get out of his factory life and head back to the country where he can be a lumberjack again. Jane, now a mom, is trying to get Mooney to come down to earth and be a good dad. The play doesn't go where you think it will, and the reversal at the conclusion is a moment of role reversal that must have shocked the audiences in the 40s. Ms. Necchifaro's Jane is realistic, emotionally engaged, and truthful. She finds the anger and the joy in this character, and she knows the responsibility she has taken on. Mr. Welsh gives us a Mooney who is clearly a fish out of water. His initial infatuation with Jane has cooled into a desperate desire to escape, but ultimately he recognizes his paternal responsibility and love for his child. The final show in this quatrain of Williams's Delights was Hello from Bertha, with the producer, Nicole Gutt, Actors Equity Association, playing the prostitute Bertha. Marie-Claire Girard is Goldie, Elena Clark as Lena, and J.R. Carter as the pimp. The play takes place in a bedroom of a brothel in a notorious section of East St. Louis known as the Valley. Bertha is in the tertiary stages of syphilis and is unable to work. The pimp enlists Goldie to get her up and out of bed so he can make some money in it since she cannot perform. Miss Girard presents a Goldie who is conflicted by her love and compassion for Bertha and her duty to her pimp. She has beautiful moments when she embraces and comforts Bertha, and moments of desperation when the pimp pressures her. It is a nuanced and fully realized Goldie we see. Ms. Gutt gives us a Bertha that is supposed to be fatigued, but she is so energetic that it belies her condition. She tells us she is tired, but we don't see it, and consequently it undermines the truth of what the playwright created. This was an uneven night at the theater with very experienced actors playing with people making their New York debuts. Some were successful and others not so much. Among the most successful were Ms. Obadesano's Ms. Simple, Ms. Bove's Mrs. Wire, both Mr. Welsh and Miss Necchifaro's Mooney and Jane, and Ms. Girard's Goldie. These are works not often seen anywhere by one of our greatest playwrights, so they are worth seeing for that alone. These standout performances were bonus. The show closed on November 12th. Well, that's Curtain Call for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul James Brown. Ahui ho!